Hello friend, and welcome to The Sleepy Meteorologist. Tonight, we're floating gently into the quiet, spiraling world of hurricanes and exploring how these majestic storms create their perfect circular shape. They may seem powerful and wild from afar, but within their swirling rhythm is a secret harmony, a soft and symmetrical dance of air, water, and motion. Maybe your day has been long, or maybe you're just ready to let go for a while, to drift, weightless, into the calm spaces between science and sky. If you're joining us again, welcome back, and if this is your first time, I'm so glad you're here. How's the weather feeling where you are tonight? Cool and breezy? Still and quiet? Whatever it is, it's just right for resting now. If these sleepy sky stories bring you peace, feel free to like or subscribe, only if it feels right. For now, you can snuggle in, let your body settle down, and let your mind float like a feather on the wind. There's nothing you need to do, nothing to solve, only rest. Let's begin. We begin our journey where all hurricanes are born, out over the open ocean, where the world stretches wide and blue, and time seems to move a little slower. The surface of the sea is quiet, gently shimmering under the warmth of the sun. A stillness hangs in the air, broken only by the hush of distant waves. This is the nursery of storms, a place where the sky and sea meet in silent conversation. As sunlight pours down like a warm blanket, the ocean begins to store heat. It absorbs the energy slowly, patiently, turning surface waters into a gentle wellspring of warmth. The air just above this warm water begins to change. It grows lighter, warmer, and it starts to rise. This rising air draws more air upward from below, like a breath slowly exhaled toward the heavens. With it comes water vapor, invisible, delicate, and full of potential. As it ascends higher into the sky, it begins to cool. And when warm vapor meets cool heights, something beautiful begins to unfold. Tiny droplets gather together, softly forming the first threads of cloud. These clouds stack gently upward, like cotton towers in slow motion, pillars of softness reaching for the upper atmosphere. They build not with force, but with patience, layer by layer, droplet by droplet. And in the midst of these growing towers, winds begin to whisper. They don't rush or roar, not yet. They spiral gently, wrapping around the rising column of air. This is the beginning of rotation, not dramatic, but delicate, like a dancer slowly finding their balance. Here, in this tranquil swirl of motion, the seeds of a hurricane are sown. There is no thunderclap, no dramatic shift, just a gathering of elements, a meeting of warm sea, moist air, and gentle rotation. Nature at its most subtle and elegant. From above, if you could float peacefully in the sky and look down, you might see nothing more than a soft cluster of clouds. But deep inside, the storm is learning how to breathe. It inhales the warmth of the ocean. It exhales clouds into the sky. Each breath builds its shape, its motion, its quiet strength. There is no rush. A hurricane is never born in a hurry. It is sculpted slowly, patiently, its early form cradled by the rhythm of the sea. So let's rest here for a moment, in the calm beginnings of something vast. Let the soft winds spiral around us. Let the warmth of the ocean rock us gently. Everything is unfolding just as it should, slowly, softly, beautifully. The sky is beginning to shape itself, and we are simply here to watch. Every hurricane, no matter how large or small, rests upon a quiet engine, a hidden source of power, soft and steady. That engine is warm ocean water. Beneath the stirring clouds and spiraling winds, the sea stretches out, vast, shimmering and sunlit. The sun's rays reach into the water's surface, warming it day by day, until it becomes a slow, simmering pool of energy. Not too hot, just warm enough to whisper to the sky above. This warmth isn't loud. It doesn't crackle or shout. It hums, a quiet release of energy in the form of moisture. Water, warmed by sunlight, rises gently into the air as vapor. It's invisible, weightless, but filled with promise. This vapor rises and feeds the storm. Like breath to a flame, this moisture fuels the growing system. Every drop carries energy from the ocean up into the atmosphere. And as this vapor cools and condenses into clouds, it releases heat, a gift from the sea to the sky. This release of heat is soft and invisible, but it helps the storm rise taller, stronger, rounder. The center of the storm begins to take shape, not with sharp lines, but with slow curves. Nature is finding balance in motion. It is wrapping energy into a spiral, like a potter spinning clay into a perfect circle. From space, the early storm begins to resemble a slow turning wheel. Clouds wrapping inward, winds gently flowing around a center. But even here, in its growing strength, the storm remains silent and graceful. The sea is still feeding it, still offering its warmth with each soft breath of vapor. Beneath the clouds, the ocean continues to hum. It is not afraid. It simply gives. It gives its warmth to the air above, and the air accepts it. All of this begins quietly, in the soft hum of evaporating sea. No chaos, no rush, just the patient exchange between water and sky. A conversation in temperature and motion, a dance older than memory. So, let us stay here for a moment, hovering just above the ocean's surface, feeling the warmth rise around us like a sigh. The storm is gathering itself, not with noise, but with grace. The heart of the hurricane is beginning to beat, and it beats in time with the sea. The earth is always spinning, gently, endlessly, even as we sleep. Though we rarely feel it, this quiet motion beneath our feet shapes the very breath of the sky. It is this slow, steady rotation that gives every hurricane its graceful twist. This gentle force has a name, the Coriolis effect. It isn't loud or forceful. It doesn't shove or jolt. Instead, it nudges. It leans ever so slightly on the rising air, turning its upward path into a soft, spiraling curve. When warm air begins to rise from the ocean's surface, it doesn't simply go straight up into the sky. Because the earth is spinning beneath it, that air is gently pulled into a circular path, a slow turn, like a dancer responding to music you can't hear. In the northern hemisphere, that spiral curves counterclockwise. In the southern hemisphere, it turns the other way, clockwise. Not because the storm decides to change, but because the world itself is different on either side of the equator. Each hemisphere carries its own rhythm, its own direction of flow. This isn't a sudden twist. The Coriolis effect builds gradually, invisibly, layer by layer, wind by wind. It takes what began as a simple rise of air and turns it into something graceful, a soft, celestial rotation, as though the earth were guiding the storm with its fingertips. And while the term Coriolis may sound precise and technical, its influence feels almost magical, as if the planet itself were drawing circles in the air. Without this gentle turning, storms would rise upward in simple columns, never finding their shape. There would be no swirl, no dance, no hurricane. But with this subtle nudge from Earth's spin, the rising air begins to wrap inward, drawing moisture, wind, and energy into a rounded form. The storm becomes a living spiral, curved and symmetrical, cradled by motion itself. If you were to float high above the Earth, drifting softly in the quiet of space, you'd see these spirals forming like brushstrokes, painted slowly across the canvas of the sea. Each one unique, each one shaped by the planet's turning. No two are ever quite the same, but they all spin with the same quiet reason. The Earth is always moving. Even now, as you listen, as you breathe gently in and out, the world is spinning beneath you, and that spin is shaping the skies. It's easy to forget that something so vast can move so silently. But perhaps that's part of the wonder. A storm's circular elegance, its symmetry and balance, are not born in chaos, but in calm, patient motion. So let's rest in that rhythm, in the soft, unseen turning of our planet, in the way it spins hurricanes into being without a single sound. Just a whisper, just a push, just the Earth, doing what it has always done. At the very center of a hurricane, beyond the swirling winds, past the thick, spinning walls of cloud and rain, there lies something unexpected, a place of stillness, a circle of calm, a silent heart known as the eye. This is not a place of chaos. It is not loud or wild. It is quiet, strangely quiet, a hidden calm cradled in the arms of a storm. As the hurricane grows, it forms a towering wall of clouds around its center, a structure called the eye wall, where the storm's strongest winds live, circling fiercely, like dancers in tight formation. But inside that ring, something else is happening. Air, once rising with force, begins to descend. It presses downward gently, smoothing out the turbulence, warming slightly as it sinks. This soft downward motion calms the center, creating a pocket of peace in the middle of the storm's dance. The eye is often clear, a window to the sky. Through it, sunlight may shine, or stars may twinkle in a moment of stillness. It is a strange and beautiful contrast. Chaos around the edges, serenity at the core. This calm isn't empty. It is full of balance, full of quiet tension that holds the whole system together. The eye is the hurricane's axis, the quiet around which all else spins. As the storm intensifies, the eye becomes more defined. Its edges sharpen, its winds become more focused. The eye wall tightens like a circle drawn with perfect care. Stronger winds on the outside, deeper calm on the inside. This contrast between motion and stillness is one of nature's most delicate creations, not created by force alone, but by the harmony of rising and falling air, pulling and pressing, giving and receiving. And if you could drift there, float weightlessly into the center of the storm, you'd find a silence so complete, it feels like a dream. You might see a patch of blue sky above, or a golden hue if the sun is setting. All around, clouds would tower like gentle cliffs, circling you in slow, graceful motion. The wind would hush, the air would hold its breath, and you, the quiet observer, would be held in the heartbeat of the hurricane. Even in nature's greatest storms, there is a center of peace, a reminder that even in the midst of movement, there is room for stillness. So let your breath follow that rhythm, the spinning, the slowing, the soft descent into calm. The eye is not a place to fear. It is a place to understand. It is balance. It is rest. It is the heart of a spiral drawn by sky and sea. And as the storm circles on, the eye remains watchful, quiet, steady, a silent promise at the center of the wind. Encircling the calm eye of the hurricane is a ring of motion, breathless and immense. This is the eye wall, a perfect circle of cloud and wind, wrapped tightly around the storm's quiet heart. Here, the hurricane reaches its peak strength. But there is no sudden violence in our telling, only the slow, powerful grace of nature in motion. The eye wall is not chaotic. It is structured, balanced, a ring of energy shaped by air, heat, and time. Within this band, air rises rapidly, drawn upward in a swirling column. Imagine a spiral staircase, but one made of warm, moist air, lifting skyward in slow motion. As the air rises, it cools and condenses into tall, dense clouds, towers of vapor that encircle the eye like a crown. These are thunderstorms, gathered and synchronized, dancing in a circle guided by invisible hands. Lightning may flash here, soft and distant, like the flicker of thought in the back of your mind. Thunder rolls gently through the cloud towers, a slow, low murmur, never startling, only reminding us that power and peace can live side by side. The winds in the eye wall spiral with purpose. They are not wild, but deeply organized, moving in near-perfect unison around the center. This rotation gives the hurricane its iconic shape, its breathtaking symmetry, a circle drawn by temperature, pressure, and planetary motion. The warmth of the ocean continues to feed this spiral. Moisture rises into the storm, and as it cools, it releases energy, a quiet gift that fuels the system further. The more it rises, the stronger the eye wall becomes. But even in its strength, the eye wall holds to balance. It is neither erratic nor uncontrolled. It is nature finding form, finding rhythm, finding expression in motion. From above, this ring appears as a glowing halo around the eye. A ring of towering clouds, so perfectly circular, it could be mistaken for art. And perhaps, in a way, it is. An artwork of atmosphere, sculpted slowly, painted in water and wind. The air within the eye wall moves both up and around, spinning and rising, carrying with it all the elements of the storm's identity. To drift near the eye wall, if only in imagination, is to float alongside the storm's breath, to witness its most powerful structure, not as a threat, but as a masterpiece in motion. There is no need to rush, no need to brace or fear, only to observe, to let the rhythm of the spiral lull you deeper into rest. For in this ring of power, where clouds reach high and winds turn wide, the hurricane finds its voice. Not loud, not harsh, but measured, balanced, and infinitely patient. Beyond the calm eye and beyond the swirling eye wall, stretch the gentle arms of the hurricane, the spiral rainbands. These sweeping curves reach far across the sea, extending outward like the petals of a sleeping flower. They spiral gracefully toward the center, wrapping the storm in long, elegant strokes. From above, they resemble brushstrokes on water, painted by wind, guided by air. Each one arcs inward, following the shape of the storm with quiet precision. These rainbands are not random. They are part of the hurricane's design, a deeper architecture of spiraling motion, curved ribbons of weather that echo the structure of the whole. Within these bands, the air still breathes in rhythm with the storm. Moisture gathers and falls as rain, sometimes gently, sometimes in bursts. Winds whisper and rustle, bringing the ocean's voice to the sky. These bands carry waves of rainfall, like pulses of breath. They move in waves, never frantic, just flowing, in and out, like tides returning home. From time to time, you may hear the soft rumble of thunder, or catch a flash of distant lightning. But even here, the mood remains gentle. Each sound is softened by distance, each light flicker filtered through cloud. Spiral rainbands may stretch hundreds of miles. They give the storm its reach, its wide arms, extended not in force, but in form. They're the outer ripples of the storm's heartbeat. Sometimes These bands break and reform. Sometimes they drift, sway, or fade, but always they trace the spiral inward. Always they belong to the larger motion. If you could float high above, you would see these curves unfolding across the ocean, quietly, beautifully, like the grooves of a seashell, or the rings of a galaxy. And beneath them, the sea responds, its surface rippling gently under wind and rain, not crashing, but swaying in time with the sky above. These outer arms are not just decoration. They help the storm breathe, pulling in energy, guiding the flow of moisture and wind, completing the spiral structure with grace. Let yourself drift along one now, imagining it as a pathway, curving softly toward the center, like a lullaby leading you inward. Spiral rainbands are the storm's embrace. They hold space for balance, for symmetry, for beauty. And as they drift across the sea, you may find yourself drifting too, rocked gently by the rhythm of water and wind, wrapped in the soft spiral of the sky. Low pressure lies at the heart of every hurricane, like a quiet hollow in the sky, a gentle dip in the atmosphere's invisible landscape. You can't see pressure the way you see clouds, but you can feel what it does. Pressure is the soft weight of air, the steady presence of the atmosphere resting above us. And when that weight becomes lighter in one place, when the pressure drops, the sky begins to move. At the center of a hurricane, pressure sinks low, not suddenly, not sharply, but steadily, like a slow inhale drawing everything inward. The lower it sinks, the stronger the pull. Not a harsh pull, more like a gentle invitation. Air around the storm begins to flow inward, gliding across the ocean's surface, drifting toward the center, as if it's being called home. And as this air moves inward, it doesn't travel in straight lines. The earth is turning beneath it, and the winds respond to that motion with graceful curves. So the air begins to arc and bend and spiral. It becomes a vast, circling stream of motion, like water swirling down a quiet drain, only softer, slower, and filled with warm ocean breath. This is how the storm's shape begins to emerge. The hurricane is not built from solid walls or rigid edges. It is sculpted by gradients, by tiny differences in pressure that stretch over miles of sky. It is a weather sculpture shaped by invisible forces that don't need to be seen to be deeply felt. As air rushes inward, it gathers warmth and moisture from the sea. The ocean offers its vapor freely, and the air carries it gently upward. The closer the air drifts toward the center, the more it rises. And as it rises, it cools, and the vapor condenses, forming clouds that stack higher and higher, like soft towers built in silence. This rising air reinforces the low pressure below, because when air moves upward, it leaves behind a lighter space, a soft emptiness that invites more air in, and so the cycle continues. Inward, then upward, then outward above the storm, then inward again below. A breathing system, a slow, circular rhythm. This is why hurricanes become round, because pressure creates a center, and the wind, always seeking balance, wraps itself around that center like a gentle ribbon. The storm takes on its rounded shape, hugging the quiet middle the way petals surround a bloom. Not tight with tension, but curved with symmetry. A spiral flower made of cloud and wind. If you could drift above the hurricane at night, you might see the clouds turning softly, brightened by moonlight, their curves shimmering like silver paint on dark water. The shape would feel almost peaceful, an enormous pattern drawn with patience. And deep in that shape, low pressure continues its quiet work, a gentle grip, a soft pull, guiding the storm into the form it's meant to have. So as you rest, let yourself imagine that center, not as something empty, but as something calming, a still point, a quiet hollow, a gentle place the winds can circle around without ever needing to hurry. And in that slow spiral, the sky shapes itself, one breath at a time. Inside a hurricane, wind does not wander randomly. It follows paths, softly guided by nature's quiet equations, the ones written not on paper, but in temperature, pressure, and motion. The wind curves, wraps, and accelerates in arcs that feel almost deliberate, as if the storm is tracing circles in the air with great care. This is the geometry of a hurricane. Even though a hurricane may appear immense and overwhelming from far away, its inner structure is deeply organized. The winds have a pattern, a balance, a rhythm that repeats itself again and again. Near the center, winds move fastest. They gather strength as they spiral inward, pulled by the low pressure at the core and shaped by Earth's slow turning beneath them. This is where the storm's strongest winds live, forming a ring of speed around the calm eye. Not a jagged ring, but a smooth one, a curved band of motion wrapped perfectly around stillness. It is one of the most fascinating contrasts in weather, the fastest motion circling the deepest calm. As you move farther outward from the center, the winds begin to change. They slow, spread, and become wider in their path. Still moving in curves, still following the storm's overall spiral, but with a gentler touch. This shift, this gradient between inner strength and outer softness, is one of the reasons hurricanes look so symmetrical from above. It's not just clouds creating the shape, it's the wind itself shaping the storm like invisible hands shaping clay. Imagine a spinning wheel. Near the center, everything moves quickly. The turn is tight, fast, concentrated, but toward the edges, the movement becomes broader, slower, more relaxed. A hurricane behaves in a similar way. The inner winds tighten like a carefully wound ribbon. The outer winds loosen, stretching outward like long, flowing fabric. And all of it, together, forms a circle. A hurricane is not chaos, it's a circle of harmony. Even the storm's strength comes from balance, because wind doesn't simply spin for no reason. It spins because it is constantly seeking equilibrium, responding to pressure differences, responding to warmth and rising air, responding to the planet's endless rotation. The storm's wind field, the full shape of its winds, becomes like a fingerprint, a signature pattern made of curved paths that never cross in confusion, only wrap and flow like a quiet river of air. And perhaps that's what makes hurricanes so mesmerizing to watch. They appear like a living mandala, a sacred circle drawn in cloud and wind, a geometry of atmosphere. From far above, the symmetry can feel almost soothing, even hypnotic. Spirals turning inward, rings forming around the center, outer winds stretching long and wide, everything moving, yet everything aligned. So, as you listen, let your mind follow those arcs gently. Let your thoughts curve the way the winds curve, not sharply, not suddenly, but smoothly, like a slow swirl in warm tea. The hurricane's winds are guided by nature's soft mathematics. And in that quiet order, there is something deeply calming, a reminder that even the biggest patterns in the sky can be shaped by balance, by rhythm, and by harmony. And now, as the winds continue their graceful turning, we drift onward into the next layer of the storm story. Inside every cloud, within every swirl of wind, there is warmth being quietly exchanged. It's not a warmth you can see, but it is always there, softly shaping the storm from within. This is latent heat, an invisible energy, released when water vapor condenses into cloud. As warm, moist air rises into the atmosphere, it carries water vapor like a secret. And when that vapor cools, as it does high in the sky, it begins to change. It turns into tiny droplets, and in doing so, it lets go of its hidden warmth. This gentle release of energy is the storm's quiet fuel. It doesn't flash or roar. It simply warms the surrounding air, whispering strength into the system. The heat helps the air rise faster and higher, making the entire structure more alive. And as the air continues its upward motion, it brings more vapor with it, more clouds, more condensation, more latent heat. This is not a chaotic process. It happens in graceful patterns, soft spirals within spirals, sculpting the storm with a patient hand. As the energy flows, it helps define the storm's symmetry. Clouds form in curving lines, layering themselves like brushstrokes across a canvas. Each cloud is shaped not just by wind, but by the warmth released quietly within it. Latent heat is like the potter's touch, subtle but shaping, like warm hands smoothing the edges of a spinning wheel. The hurricane becomes more defined, more circular, its motion more coordinated with every release. And though we cannot see the heat itself, we can see its effects in the tall cloud towers, in the spiraling arms, in the storm's elegant, cohesive form. This hidden warmth is the heartbeat of the hurricane. It pulses upward, not in noise or fury, but in rhythm. Upward motion begets more rising air, more condensation, more heat, and the cycle continues. Even now, as you rest, imagine that soft upward motion, a warm current lifting into cool air, droplets forming, heat quietly blooming in the sky. It's a gentle engine, one that doesn't rely on metal or noise, but on balance, on breath, on the transformation of water into cloud. The cycle of latent heat gives hurricanes their shape, their energy, and their grace. It binds together the elements, sea, air, temperature, into a unified spiral. And it does so invisibly, delicately, without ever rushing. So, the next time you see a swirling storm from above, a perfect spiral turning slowly over the sea, remember that its shape is not just cloud and wind. It is shaped by something quieter, softer, a warmth rising gently into the waiting sky. And in that warmth, there is harmony. A hurricane is not built all at once. It grows, layer by layer, in a rhythm both intricate and patient. At its heart lies a quiet loop, a process repeating softly, over and over, each turn reinforcing the one before. This is the feedback loop that shapes the storm. It begins with rising air, warm, moist, and ready to move. As this air lifts upward, it cools and condenses into clouds. With that condensation comes latent heat, a release of invisible energy that warms the surrounding air, helping it rise even faster. This creates space below, a soft pull that draws in more air from the surface, which then rises, cools, condenses, and the cycle begins again. Each round of this loop strengthens the storm's structure. More heat, more lift, more wind, more symmetry. The hurricane begins to feed itself. But this is not a frantic feeding. It is calm, persistent, unfolding slowly, like the growth of a tree. Each upward movement builds upon the last. Clouds stack taller, winds wrap tighter, rainbands extend outward in soft spirals. The storm becomes a sculpture in motion, a balanced expression of air and ocean energy. Like rings in a tree trunk, Each part of the storm is connected to what came before. You can trace its shape outward and backward, all the way to its quiet beginnings over the sea. This feedback loop is nature's way of refining the spiral. It takes something loose and unformed and draws it into a pattern. It smooths the rough edges, organizes the winds, and sharpens the circle. Every moment of the loop adds structure, not just to the eye or the eye wall, but to the whole system. From the innermost column of rising air to the farthest spiral rainband, the storm becomes more symmetrical, more complete. This is how hurricanes grow with grace, not by explosion, but by repetition, by a loop that hums with quiet precision. And inside that loop, there is peace, there is rhythm, there is trust that the system knows how to build itself. As you drift here with the storm, feel the repetition of it. The rising, the cooling, the warming, the drawing in. Let it mirror your own breath. In, out, each breath building gently on the last. This feedback loop doesn't just create energy, it creates order. It brings the spiral into focus, carving beauty from motion. And as the storm continues to spin, layering itself through time, you may begin to feel the same gentle pull inward, toward rest, toward quiet, toward balance. The symmetry doesn't just appear, it's built slowly, softly, by the system's own quiet persistence. And in that quiet, there is wonder. High above the open sea, winds do something remarkable. They curve. They don't rush in straight lines or scatter in chaotic paths. They turn, they spiral, they follow soft arcs drawn across the air, until, with time, they begin to form circles. This isn't randomness, it's not disorder. It's the atmosphere responding to deep, invisible rules, rules made by pressure, temperature, and the planet's gentle spin. It begins with a difference. Somewhere, warm air is rising, pulled upward by the heat of the ocean below. And as that warm air rises, it leaves behind a space, a soft, low-pressure area that begins to pull air toward it. Air from all around begins to flow inward, drawn gently to that lower pressure at the center. But Earth is spinning, and as the air travels across its surface, it doesn't move in a straight path. It bends, ever so slightly, turned by the slow rotation of the planet beneath it. This effect is called the Coriolis force, and it gently nudges the air to one side. In the northern hemisphere, it curves the wind to the right. In the southern hemisphere, to the left. So instead of rushing directly toward the center, the air begins to arc, to spiral, to turn. Imagine trying to walk straight across a spinning carousel. Your path would curve, whether you wanted it to or not. The air in the atmosphere feels this same gentle tug. As the wind draws nearer to the center of the storm, the curve becomes tighter. The air doesn't collide at the middle. It begins to rotate around it, wrapping the storm in spirals. From above, this motion becomes mesmerizing. Clouds carried by the wind arrange themselves in wide, graceful bands, all flowing inward and curving into perfect loops around a single, quiet point. It is a dance of geometry, a storm shaped by invisible curves. This curved motion also helps to balance the system. It allows the air to continue rising at the center without piling up or bursting outward. It keeps the storm steady, a peaceful choreography of forces in motion. Even the strongest hurricanes owe their shape to these soft, spiraling winds, not rushed, not random, but curved with care, like waves rolling into a gentle whirlpool, like a waltz across the surface of the sea. So the next time you see a satellite image of a storm, a perfect spiral turning quietly over the ocean, remember that every curve began as straight wind, gently turned by the earth itself. And now, as you rest, you can imagine yourself in that soft flow, drifting with the wind, arcing gently, spiraling inward. A single breeze, part of a larger circle, finding its path in the sky's quiet design. At the heart of every hurricane, past the spiraling rainbands, beyond the towering eye wall, there is calm, stillness, a space so quiet it feels like stepping into a dream. This is the eye of the storm, the peaceful center, a pocket of serenity wrapped in motion. But why, amid so much swirling power, does the center stay calm? The answer lies in the way air moves. Throughout the storm, warm air rises. It lifts from the ocean's surface, carrying moisture upward, where it cools and forms clouds. This rising air flows up and outward near the top of the storm, creating space below, and drawing in more air near the surface. But in the very center, something different happens. Instead of rising, the air begins to sink. Gently, quietly, it descends. As it sinks, it warms slightly, not enough to stir, but enough to dry the air. This warm, descending air doesn't support cloud formation. It pushes clouds away. It smooths the air, settles the turbulence, and leaves behind a clear, calm space. The winds that rotate fiercely around the eye cannot exist within it. Their energy bends around the center, spinning tightly in the eye wall, the ring of towering storms that hugs the eye's edge. But inside that ring, stillness. It's a contrast that feels almost poetic. All around, motion, force, energy. But in the core, silence. The eye can span many miles across, sometimes as wide as a city. And from within, it may look up to open sky. The sun might shine. The stars might peek through. The winds hush to a whisper. It's a reminder that in nature, great power and deep peace can exist side by side. The calm isn't just an accident. It's an essential part of the storm's structure, a place of balance around which the rest of the hurricane spins. It helps the storm hold its shape, gives the winds something to orbit, grounds the entire system. Without this quiet center, the spiral would unravel, the symmetry would fade, the hurricane would lose its rhythm. So the next time you see a swirling storm from space, know that in the middle of that motion there is stillness, and that stillness is not weakness, it's design, it's harmony. As you breathe in and breathe out, imagine that calm center, a gentle pocket of sky, floating in the midst of movement, anchored, unmoving, serene. You are safe there, you are still. And the winds, no matter how they dance around you, cannot reach the peace you carry at your center. In every hurricane, there is a quiet kind of beauty, a hidden grace, born not from chaos, but from balance. Though it moves with immense energy, the hurricane does not lash wildly in all directions. Instead, its power is arranged, curved, calibrated. It follows rules older than memory, rules of wind, heat, and rhythm. And from these quiet laws, a swirling form emerges, smooth, circular, steady. This is the beauty of balanced motion. Everything in the storm responds to everything else. As warm air rises, cool air flows in to take its place. As pressure falls in the center, winds spiral inward, seeking harmony in the void. As clouds build upward, energy loops through the system, feeding it, lifting it, turning it. There is no single force acting alone. Every movement is connected. Every gust, every current is part of a wider pattern. Even the violence, when viewed from above, is softened into elegance, an immense choreography across the sky. If you watch the winds, you'll notice they do not travel in straight lines. They curve gently, as if tracing the edges of an invisible bowl. Each gust flows in relation to the others. Nothing crashes, nothing collides. It all bends, adapts, turns. There's a quiet intelligence in the way the storm moves, the kind that comes from balance. Like the turning of a wheel, every part of the hurricane rotates with the others. And because the forces are so evenly distributed, so smoothly arranged, the storm can hold its shape for hours, even days. It becomes more than weather. It becomes a circle in motion, a geometry of wind, a system sculpted by harmony. And this harmony is not fragile. It is deep. It is what allows the storm to grow without falling apart, to spin without unraveling. It is the calm center that shapes the rotating arms, and the balance between air, water, and motion that allows the spiral to persist. As you rest here with the storm, you may begin to feel that same balance within yourself, your breath rising and falling, your body still, your thoughts drifting softly like clouds. Nature often teaches us through rhythm, through cycles, seasons, patterns we cannot always see. The hurricane, too, is a teacher, one that speaks in spirals and whispers with the wind. Its message is clear. There is strength in balance. There is peace in symmetry. And even the most powerful forces in the sky move with grace when they are in harmony. So let yourself drift now into the gentle rhythm of the storm. Let the winds turn slowly around you, never touching, only circling. Let your breath follow the pattern, in and out, steady and soft. Because in the beauty of balanced motion, there is stillness, there is clarity, there is rest. Far above the earth, satellites drift silently through the darkness, watching the world from a place of quiet. And when a hurricane forms, they see something astonishing. Not disorder, not chaos, but symmetry. From space, a hurricane appears like a living mandala, a radiant spiral etched in, cloud and wind, turning gently over the blue of the ocean. The eye is unmistakable, a perfect round center, calm and still, framed by towering clouds that wrap around it like a silver crown. This is the eye wall, bright and sharp in satellite images, glowing in the infrared spectrum like a ring of light around the storm's heart. Beyond that center, the storm unfolds in spirals. Long, curved bands of cloud stretch outward, each one curling gracefully, each arc echoing the one before it. These are the rainbands, the hurricane's outer arms. From space, they look like brushstrokes painted by the air itself, soft, fluid, and deliberate. You can count the bands sometimes. Watch them wrap around the core in repeating patterns, circles within circles. The structure looks almost too perfect to be real. And yet, it is born of natural processes, of temperature, moisture, rotation, and time. Satellites allow us to witness this artistry. They take snapshots in visible light, in infrared, and in microwave readings. Each view tells a slightly different story, but all reveal the same truth. A hurricane in full form is a study in symmetry. It's not just pleasing to the eye. This balance is the key to the storm's life. A well-formed spiral tells us that the storm is healthy, organized, in harmony with its own internal forces. If you look closely, you'll see how the clouds curve smoothly, not jagged, not uneven. They follow invisible paths set by wind and pressure gradients, drawn together by the Earth's slow spin. From this high perspective, the storm is quiet. You can't hear the winds. You don't feel the rain. All you see is shape, color, motion, and in that silent image, you find something unexpectedly calming. the precision of it, the softness, the grace, as if the atmosphere itself were trying to write a poem in spirals. And perhaps it is, because what satellites truly capture is not just data or distance, but beauty. They show us the quiet symmetry that exists, even in systems of great power. They remind us that nature, when left to its rhythm, creates with elegance. So as you rest, you might imagine yourself high above the earth, gazing down at a glowing spiral of cloud, soft, slow, and symmetrical, a peaceful shape floating across a moonlit sea. And all around you, space is silent. The world turns beneath you, and the storm spins gently on. Look up, and you'll see them, clouds stretched, swirled, and shaped by air. They drift like whispers across the sky, but within their softness lies the signature of the wind. Especially in hurricanes, clouds are not just floating, they're being painted. Every streak, every curve, every towering plume is a brushstroke drawn by moving air. The wind is the artist, the clouds its canvas. As the storm spins, air rises in spiraling motion, warm, moist, and eager to lift. As it rises, water vapor condenses into cloud, and the wind shapes that cloud into motion. In a hurricane, these cloud shapes are never random. They trace the storm's rotation, forming long, elegant arms that wrap around the center, bands of white that stretch for miles across the sea. From above, these patterns seem painted with care, sweeping curves that draw your eyes inward, toward the quiet center, like waves gently spinning around a still pond. These spiraling arms are made of cumulus and cumulonimbus clouds, pillars of rising air stacked high into the sky, carried by the wind into arcs that resemble fingerprints in the atmosphere. Each cloud is born from warmth, heat lifted from the ocean's surface, and every breeze gives it shape. The faster the winds turn, the tighter the brushstrokes become. Near the center, clouds circle closely, forming the eye wall, a ring of dense cloud wrapped tightly around the eye. Further out, the strokes grow broader, more fluid, painted across the sky with a softer hand. Some clouds rise in towers, others spread in layers, but all of them bend to the will of the wind. Even the texture of the clouds tells a story, smooth where the air is stable, billowed where the wind changes, rippled where layers of air slide over one another. In the hurricane's arms, clouds curve like ribbons, and within those curves, tiny raindrops are born, carried aloft and released like gentle gifts from the sky. There's a rhythm to it, a quiet repetition. Clouds form, are lifted, shaped, and carried onward. And as they move, they reflect the structure of the storm itself, a spiral made visible, a pattern made soft. If you could drift above the hurricane, you might think someone had swirled white paint across blue glass. A great spiral brushed onto the world's canvas. Not rushed, not harsh, but deeply intentional. Every turn of wind draws a new stroke. Every breath of air adds a new layer. And together, they compose a picture in motion. This is how the wind paints clouds, with patience, with rhythm, with grace. So now, as you settle deeper into rest, let your thoughts drift like clouds. Let them rise and curl, lift and turn, shaped gently by the slow breeze of your breath. You are part of the pattern too, a peaceful movement inside the spiral of sky. Rainfall within a hurricane is not scattered or wild. It is arranged, woven into the spiral like beads strung along a turning thread. Every drop is part of a larger pattern, a quiet, continuous rotation. This rainfall begins with warmth, heat drawn from the ocean's skin and lifted into the sky. As moist air rises and cools, water condenses into cloud, and then into rain. But the rain doesn't fall straight down. Not here. It falls through a spinning world, a spiraling system that guides every drop. The storm turns slowly, and with it, the rain follows graceful arcs through the sky. Imagine holding an umbrella beneath a spinning fountain. The water wouldn't fall in simple lines. It would curve, it would circle, it would dance. That's what rain does in a hurricane. It moves with the wind. It falls in sweeping motions, wrapped into the storm structure. It doesn't resist the rotation. It becomes part of it. Most of the rainfall happens in bands, long, curved stretches of cloud and precipitation that spiral into the center. These are the rain bands, and within them, rain pulses in waves. Sometimes gentle, sometimes heavier, but always patterned. These rain bands move with the storm, carrying bursts of rainfall across the sea. They bend inward toward the eye, and as they do, their precipitation arcs as well, like threads being pulled into a coil. Even within the eye wall, where the storm's energy peaks, rain doesn't fall in chaos. It circulates with precision, rising in updrafts, cooling, falling, and rising again. This cycle is constant, a rotation of energy that gives the storm both power and poise. And each drop of rain is part of that quiet choreography. From far above, the rainfall becomes visible in satellite images, bands of moisture spinning slowly around a central point, a spiral of precipitation drawn by air and gravity and time. If you could listen to the rain from within the storm, you might hear it as a soft, continuous sound, not pounding, but steady. A gentle hush, a rhythmic patter, like nature whispering a lullaby in circles. Even lightning, when it appears, echoes the rotation, flashing along the spiral's arms, illuminating the rain bands like lanterns in the mist. And then the rain begins again, falling through the spiral, following the flow, never out of place, never hurried. Rain in a hurricane is not chaos. It's design, it's harmony, a system of water and wind moving together in perfect balance. So, as you listen now, imagine the rainfall around you, spinning softly, gently, wrapping the air in spirals of sound. Every drop knows its place. Every curve has its rhythm. And you, resting in stillness, are floating in the center of that gentle rotation. Beneath the turning clouds, beneath the ribbons of wind and rain, the sea responds. Though hurricanes live in the sky, their breath stirs the ocean, subtly, rhythmically, as if the sea itself were listening. The waves do not rise in sudden panic. They roll, they sway, they echo the spiral above. As the storm turns, its winds brush the ocean's surface, stroking it with long, circular hands. These winds draw the water outward from the center, just as they do with air, forming curves on the sea that mirror the shape of the storm in the sky. This is the ocean's reply, not a mirror in image, but in motion. The surface currents begin to bend, flowing along the spiral arms of the storm. Beneath them, layers of cooler water rise, drawn upward by the churn. This is called upwelling, a quiet exchange between deep and shallow, a shifting of temperature and energy. Even the sea foam forms spirals. It swirls in curving lines, riding the rhythm of wind and wave. Tiny bubbles caught in a dance they cannot see, yet fully follow. And deeper still, the water moves in, silent spirals. Energy from above travels downward, pressing gently into the deep blue in wide, circular waves. These are not crashing tides. They are movements of presence, signals that the sky is spinning. The storm and the sea are not separate. They are partners. One moves and the other answers. A slow duet, an unspoken rhythm shared across the surface of the world. When rainfall touches the ocean, it doesn't disrupt, it joins. Each drop finds its place in the spiral. Each ripple expands in curves, echoing the geometry above. Even sound moves differently in this storm-shaped sea. Waves murmur in circles. The wind skims the surface with a hush that seems to sing. If you were floating gently in these waters, you'd feel the circular pull, not frightening, but enveloping. The water would rock you in slow arcs. It would carry you like a lullaby made of salt and current. It would whisper of balance, of how the sky and sea never move alone. In satellite images, you might see the swirl of sediment drawn outward by the turning winds, or subtle temperature changes marking where warm surface water has been moved aside. But none of this is sharp. It is motion woven together, air above, water below, both spinning with grace. Even after the storm has moved on, its spiral remains. The ocean remembers. It holds the echoes for days, sometimes weeks, slow turning eddies of warmth, lingering trails of what passed overhead. This is the lasting shape of a storm, not just in clouds, but in currents. So as you rest now, you might imagine yourself drifting at the sea's surface, feeling the soft rotation beneath. No urgency, just the memory of wind, written gently into the waves. The ocean doesn't forget the sky. It carries its patterns long after the clouds have gone. And in those quiet spirals, you may find rest too. High within the hurricane, air moves in a way that feels architectural. It doesn't just rise, it curves. It spirals upward, a steady climb through the atmosphere, like footsteps on a slow-moving spiral staircase. This staircase is invisible, but its motion shapes everything. From the storm's tall towers of cloud to the smooth arc of wind circling the eye, all of it moves in loops, layer upon layer. As warm air lifts from the surface of the sea, it carries moisture with it, invisible vapor born of sunlight and ocean breath. This air doesn't rush upward. It turns as it rises, influenced by the Earth's rotation and the pull of lower pressure at the center. So it begins to climb, not vertically, but in wide circles that narrow near the core. Each loop brings the air higher, each turn a little closer to the top. This spiral motion creates structure. It gives the hurricane its elegant, rounded shape. From the outside, you see clouds stretching upward in curves. From within, the air is always moving, never straight, always in graceful ascent. It's like the storm is building itself, floor by floor, loop by loop, stacking warmth and vapor into soft towers of cloud. As the air ascends, it cools and condensation begins. Cloud droplets form, and with them, latent heat is released, a soft warmth that fuels the system further, adding energy to the climb. This release helps the staircase continue, lifting more air, building more structure, tightening the spiral. And above this rising motion, the air fans out, moving away from the center in smooth arcs. This outflow helps maintain the balance, allowing more air to rise below, feeding the system without overflow. Everything is interconnected, inward, upward, outward, a spiral in all directions, held in perfect rhythm. If you could float within the storm, you'd feel that motion around you, a slow, endless turn, the air wrapping you in loops, lifting gently like a warm breeze on a spiral stair. Even the clouds reflect this movement. Their shapes curve inward as they rise, then feather outward at the top, a shape both powerful and graceful. From space, this layered ascent creates the hurricane's classic dome shape, rounded, symmetrical, capped by an outflow that stretches wide like a soft white saucer. And it all begins with that spiral path, with air rising in curves, like breath winding upward through the cathedral of the sky. There's something deeply soothing about this flow. It's not erratic, not explosive. It's patient, structured, endlessly rising, like the slow motion of a dream, climbing higher, never tiring. So, as you breathe now, imagine that spiral staircase of air, a gentle ascent, turning slowly in the warmth of the sky. Let it lift you, not quickly, but with quiet intention, one curve at a time, one breath at a time. You are rising, just like the air, softly, steadily, carried by the spiral of the storm. Beneath the clouds, beneath the winds and rain, there is something quiet at work, something unseen, but always present. Mathematics. Every spiral of cloud, every arc of wind, every lift of warm air follows the soft guidance of natural equations. Hurricanes are not just weather, they are patterns. They are systems governed by balance, by pressure, rotation, temperature, and time. And all of it, every curving motion, can be described gently by the language of numbers. But this mathematics is not cold or rigid. It's organic, soft, like the curves it creates. Air moves from high pressure to low, but the Earth is turning, so it curves. And that curved motion has a name, the Coriolis force. It can be described with a formula, but you don't need numbers to feel its beauty. You only need to watch the spiral. The storm's rotation, its strength, its size, are all shaped by equations that speak in spirals. There is the pressure gradient force, which draws air inward toward the low center. There is centripetal force, which bends that path into a curve. And there is friction at the surface, a soft drag that keeps the wind grounded and slows its flight. These forces act together. Like musicians in an orchestra, no single one plays alone, and the music they create is the spiral of the storm. In physics, there's something called vorticity, a measure of spin. It's how we understand the swirl of air. In hurricanes, vorticity is strong near the center, and it helps us understand the storm's rotation, its structure, its strength. Even the shape of the clouds, that perfect turning symmetry, comes from mathematical balance, from gradients and feedback loops, from rising motion and conservation of angular momentum. This last idea, angular momentum, is like a spinning ice skater. When they pull in their arms, they spin faster. The hurricane does this too. As air spirals inward, the spin tightens, strengthens, becomes more focused. And though these rules may sound complex, they are not harsh. They are simply the way the sky organizes itself. Mathematics, here, isn't about control. It's about rhythm. It's about describing the quiet language of the storm. The equations tell us where the winds will curve, how fast the air will rise, how wide the spiral might grow. But the storm itself is never just a calculation. It is alive with beauty. It moves with grace. It is a poem written by the rules of the atmosphere. So, as you lie here, listening to the soft spiral of this story, you may feel your own breath align, in and out, up and around, a gentle pattern within a larger design. Because even within stillness, there is motion, and even within motion, there is balance, and all of it can be traced, calculated, felt. The mathematics of hurricanes is not about prediction alone. It's about understanding the deeper order beneath the sky. A whisper of logic woven into the winds. The hurricane is a masterpiece of balance, a spiral of wind and cloud, wrapped in perfect form. But even nature's most elegant designs are not immune to change. Sometimes the symmetry breaks, not suddenly, not violently, but quietly, with subtle shifts in the air. The once perfect circle may stretch, tilt, or drift out of center. Rainbands may bend unevenly. The eye wall might wobble, or begin to form an extra ring. These changes are not mistakes. They are part of the storm's life. Because hurricanes are not statues, they're living systems, breathing in air, letting go of energy, constantly responding to the world around them. A storm's symmetry can be broken by changes in the environmental wind, what scientists call wind shear. This happens when winds at different heights blow in different directions or at different speeds. The upper part of the storm leans just slightly, and that lean can stretch the spiral, disturb the core, tilt the eye. Sometimes, dry air sneaks in from the sides, quietly diluting the moisture, sapping the strength of cloud formation. It's like a pause in the music, a soft disruption in the system's flow. Other times, the ocean beneath grows cooler. Without warm water to fuel the system, the rising air slows, the spiral loosens, the structure softens, and in these moments, the storm begins to change. The eye may fade or fill, the clouds may blur, the pattern, once clear, becomes less defined. But even this has its rhythm, because every system in nature is part of a cycle, not fixed, but flowing. The breaking of symmetry isn't the end of the story, it's the beginning of transition. Some storms weaken, others reorganize, some split into twin swirls, others form new centers, rebalancing themselves into fresh spirals. It's like watching a dance pause, then begin again with new steps. The beauty of symmetry is not in its perfection, but in how it responds to change. A storm's ability to adapt, to bend and soften, to loosen and reform, is part of what makes it remarkable. There is grace even in disorder. There is stillness even in shifts. And from space, even an asymmetric storm holds beauty. Its clouds may trail off like feathers, its center tilted like a leaning moon. But it still spins, still breathes, still whispers its spiral song. So as you rest, remember, even when your rhythm breaks, when your patterns shift, there is still balance to be found. A new shape, a different curve, but always returning to center. Because storms, like us, can grow, change, and soften, and still be whole. A hurricane is a circle drawn in air, a living spiral of wind and cloud, crafted by balance, held together by quiet, natural rhythm. But even the most graceful circles can begin to wobble when something subtle presses against them from above. This is the story of wind shear, a quiet force that can tilt a storm, stretch it, and pull at its symmetry. Wind shear is not a gust or a blast. It is a difference, a gentle disagreement between winds at different levels of the sky. At the surface, air may be moving one way, while higher up, it may drift in another direction entirely, or faster, or slower. And when those layers don't align, when the winds above push against the winds below, the storm begins to lean, not abruptly, not like a tower collapsing, but slowly, a graceful tilt, like a candle flame swaying in a breeze. The rising column of air at the heart of the hurricane, so carefully built upward in spirals, is nudged to one side. And with it, the clouds begin to stretch. The eye may lose its perfect circle, warped softly into an oval. Rainbands unravel. The storm begins to look uneven. This is shear in motion. It doesn't tear the storm apart all at once. It disturbs the harmony, pulls gently at the threads, just enough to make the spiral waver. Sometimes the effect is temporary. The storm resists. It adjusts. It re-centers itself, and continues its motion with renewed balance. But other times, the shear wins. It tilts the whole structure until the storm loses its coordination. The clouds scatter, the winds unravel, and the spiral becomes frayed at the edges. It's not destruction, it's transformation. Shear doesn't arrive with drama. It arrives like a breeze with differing opinions, pushing the storm to compromise its shape. And even in this, there is beauty. From above, a sheared storm looks like a spiral in transition, its eye displaced, its arms stretching away, like paint beginning to run across a canvas. It shows us that nature doesn't cling rigidly to form. It adapts. Even a perfect circle may yield when the winds above and the winds below sing two different songs. This is the quiet lesson of shear, that balance is not always permanent, that even the most symmetrical systems may feel the gentle pressure of shifting forces. And yet, the storm doesn't disappear. It softens, it reconsiders, it may weaken, or it may find a new balance. Sometimes, a sheared storm reforms its eye. Sometimes, it leans into the wind, tilted but still spinning. Other times, it fades into the open air, its story softly ending where sky meets sea. So, as you lie here, listening to the wind's imagined spiral, know that it's okay for circles to wobble, for forms to shift. Balance is a dance, not a fixed shape. And even in the presence of shear, in the pressure between layers, there is grace. The storm moves on, and so do you. Every hurricane begins with intention, a spiral rising from the sea, perfectly shaped by wind, warmth, and pressure. But not all storms keep their form. Some lose it, gradually, softly, like a dream fading in morning light. These are storms that let go of symmetry. They stretch, they scatter, they become something looser, less defined, but still part of the story. It can begin with a change in the ocean beneath. As the storm moves across cooler waters, its energy source begins to fade. No longer fed by warmth, the storm's breath slows. The clouds don't rise as high, the winds don't spin as fast, and slowly the structure begins to sag. Like a flower relaxing at dusk, the spiral unwinds. The eye, once so clearly formed, begins to fill with clouds. Its borders blur, its center fades. The spiral arms become ragged. Rainbands pull apart, and the once balanced shape becomes a soft scatter of motion. Sometimes it's the atmosphere above that causes the shift. Wind shear, dry air, or uneven pressure can quietly stretch the storm until it no longer holds together. Other times, landfall begins the unraveling. As the storm moves inland, it loses its access to ocean warmth. It meets terrain, trees, mountains, and friction. And though it may carry rain far inland, the spiral begins to dissolve. The storm becomes just weather again. But even this fading holds a gentle beauty. It is not failure, it is transformation, a letting go of structure and strength. From above, a storm losing its shape looks like a spiral drifting apart, a pattern returning to randomness. Clouds spread wide, like soft ink in water. The wind continues, but more like a sigh than a roar, and the rain falls, but no longer in rhythm. Now it falls freely, here and there, a slow return to ordinary sky. This dissipation is part of every storm story. The symmetry does not last forever. It was never meant to. Even in nature, nothing holds its shape forever. The beauty is in the becoming and in the soft release. The storm gave its dance, and now it rests. Sometimes, remnants of the storm continue. A swirl of clouds, a ribbon of rain, a gust of wind far from the sea. But the spiral has passed, its breath has slowed, its song has ended, and in its absence, stillness begins again. So as you rest now, imagine the storm's final moments, a spiral loosening into sky, a peaceful drift into calm. There is no rush, no ending filled with noise, only motion giving way to stillness, pattern yielding to openness. This is how storms lose their shape, not with violence, but with grace. And in their fading, we find silence, we find peace, we find sleep. A hurricane is not born perfect, it becomes. Its symmetry, so hypnotic from above, is not an instant creation, but a slow, graceful unfolding. A quiet journey from warmth to wind, from chaos to circle. Like all things in nature, a hurricane has a life, a beginning, a middle, and an end. A soft arc of existence, gathering, spiraling, fading, and at its peak, it becomes a perfect circle. But even this perfection is momentary. It lives inside a cycle, just as the moon waxes and wanes, just as tides rise and fall. It begins with a tropical disturbance, a gentle wave of low pressure drifting across warm ocean waters. There's no form yet, only a hint of motion, a whisper of organization. As warm air rises from the sea, it brings moisture with it, fueling clusters of clouds. Winds begin to shift, ever so slightly, curving, rotating. This is the early stage, the gathering, the not yet. As the storm draws in more air, the pressure at its center lowers. Clouds rise higher, wind wraps tighter, the spiral sharpens. Soon, the storm is named, a tropical depression, then a tropical storm, and finally, a hurricane. And if the atmosphere is kind, if there is little wind, sheer, warm waters beneath, and space to breathe, the storm may reach its most balanced form. This is the peak, the perfect circle, the moment where every part of the storm moves in harmony with the rest. The eye is clear and still. The eye wall is dense and round. Rainbands spiral outward in sweeping arms, like ribbons flowing from a spinning wheel. It is breathtaking to see from space, a geometry of cloud and motion, a living, breathing mandala drawn across the sea. But this perfection is delicate and fleeting. The storm begins to age, perhaps moving over cooler waters, perhaps brushing against dry air, perhaps touching land. Its winds slow, its clouds stretch, the symmetry begins to blur. The eye fills, the rainbands drift, and the once perfect circle loosens into softness. This is the ending, the release. The storm may become a remnant low, a swirl of leftover clouds and breeze, a memory of motion still echoing quietly across the sky. And then it fades, back into the background, back into the air. The life cycle of a hurricane is not a rise and fall. It is a spiral, an orbit through time, a turning of elements that begins and ends with warmth and air and water. So, as you rest now, imagine that perfect circle, not as a goal, but as a moment in a greater flow, a shape found in motion, a breath inside the wind, because everything, even perfection, belongs to a cycle, and in that cycle we find peace. Before the hurricane ever spins, before the clouds spiral or the winds rise, there is only a wave, a tropical wave, moving gently across the ocean, a slight dip in air pressure, barely noticeable to the untrained eye. But within that wave, there is potential, a hint of something greater, not yet formed. It begins with warmth, the sun heating the ocean warming the air growing moist and light, lifting upward in soft columns. As this air rises, clouds begin to bloom, small at first, scattered, but they gather, they cluster, they align. What was once a gentle ripple becomes a tropical disturbance. A conversation begins between sea and sky, between pressure and wind. If the ocean is warm enough, if the surrounding winds are calm, this disturbance finds its rhythm, it begins to spin. A tropical depression forms, not yet fierce, but already curved. The air flows inward toward the low pressure at the center, and thanks to the Earth's rotation, it bends into a spiral. The storm strengthens, fed by the ocean's breath. Rising air releases warmth, and that warmth lifts more air, a feedback loop of gentle intensity. Clouds rise taller, winds accelerate, rainbands extend outward in arms. The system becomes a tropical storm, and then, as it finds full form, a hurricane. What was once a ripple is now a circle, a powerful, elegant symmetry drawn in cloud and wind. From space, it looks deliberate, as if nature had chosen to shape a perfect storm from nothing but water and air. The eye forms, clear and still. Surrounded by the eye wall, where the winds peak, where the storm dances its fastest dance. The outer spiral bands stretch wide, touching distant seas, wrapping the storm in balance. All of this began with a wave, a soft undulation on the ocean's breath. And just as the storm forms from a wave, it may also return to one, dissipating, loosening, becoming once again a quiet ripple in the atmosphere. This is the cycle of formation, a journey from whisper to roar, from line to curve, from motion to symmetry. And though the hurricane may seem immense, its roots are small, its growth patient, its shape earned through time. So, as you rest tonight, imagine that journey, from wave to storm to circle. Let your thoughts spiral gently, like clouds being drawn toward balance. Let your breath rise like warm air and fall like rain. Let yourself move from the scattered to the centered, because everything in time finds its shape, even you. All around us, in the quiet patterns of the world, motion repeats itself in circles. Wheels turning, planets orbiting, water swirling down a drain. From the spiral arms of galaxies to the rings left by raindrops, circular motion is everywhere. Nature seems to favor the curve, and hurricanes are no exception. Their great spiraling forms are not unique. They are part of a larger rhythm, a universal preference for rounded paths over sharp ones. Why does nature love the circle? Because it is balanced, because it is efficient, because it keeps everything moving around a calm, central point. In a hurricane, air flows inward toward low pressure, but it does not take a straight path. The Earth is turning, and that rotation adds a soft twist, nudging the wind into a spiral. This curved motion isn't forced, it's the natural result of momentum seeking balance on a rotating world. And once air begins to curve, the system starts to organize. Winds feed back into themselves, forming a loop, a rhythm, a circle. But circular motion isn't only in storms. You see it in whirlpools, in dust devils, in the spinning seeds of maple trees. You feel it in the turning tides, the pulsing of waves, the orbits of the moon. Even our own breath follows a kind of loop, in, out, in again. These motions are not random. They are signs of stability, of nature conserving energy in the smoothest way possible. Straight lines may feel simple, but in the world of fluids, air, water, heat, the circle is a more natural path. It allows energy to flow without building pressure. It lets systems move without stopping. And in the center of every circle is calm, just like the eye of a storm, still, anchored, unaffected by the spiral around it. It is this circular motion that keeps a hurricane steady, the winds swirling smoothly, held in balance by invisible hands. If that motion were to break, if the air flowed without curve or order, the system would fall apart. So, it holds the spiral. it stays in motion, and through that motion, it finds form. This is the quiet gift of circles. In nature, they allow chaos to become calm. They take motion and make it beautiful. So, as you rest, imagine these motions around you. The wind circling gently overhead, the ocean spinning in soft eddies below, the clouds tracing arcs as they dance across the sky. You too are part of this rhythm. Your breath, your heartbeat, your thoughts, looping softly. In nature, nothing moves forever in a line. Everything curves back, returns, settles into orbit, and in that returning, there is peace. At the heart of the hurricane, there is an eye, still, silent, centered. While the storm turns in great spirals around it, this core remains anchored. But why? Why does this calm center stay so perfectly in place while everything else rushes around it? The answer, like the storm, is a blend of beauty and science. It begins with balance. As warm air rises through the hurricane, it creates low pressure at the surface, a soft hollow that pulls air inward. This inflow spirals due to the Earth's rotation, tightening as it nears the center. The result is a ring of strong winds, the eye wall circling around a point of quiet. Inside the eye wall, something remarkable happens. The air doesn't rise anymore, it descends. Sinking gently, it warms slightly as it falls, drying out and calming the sky within. This downward flow keeps clouds away, it smooths the turbulence, and it preserves the stillness of the eye. But the most fascinating part? The winds themselves help keep the eye in place. As air rushes around the center, it creates something called centrifugal force, a soft, outward push, like the tug you feel when spinning in a circle. This force pushes outward, while the low pressure pulls inward. The two balance each other, creating a kind of atmospheric harmony. The result? A ring of intense rotation with a center that holds still, a pause inside the motion. The eye stays centered because the storm needs it. It is the anchor around which the winds rotate. Without it, the spiral would drift, unravel, collapse. And this stability isn't fragile, it's resilient. The faster the winds turn, the more tightly the eye holds. Even when the storm moves across the ocean, its eye often remains focused, tracking in a gentle line, guided by deeper currents of atmosphere. From space, the eye looks like a pinhole in the clouds, perfectly round, perfectly placed, a soft mark of control in a world of swirling air. But the eye is not untouched. As the storm weakens, its shape may blur, its calm may fade. Still, at its strongest, the eye is steady, a quiet miracle at the storm's center. So, as you lie here, breathe into that stillness. Imagine yourself at the center of your own spiral, the world turning softly around you, but you, unmoved. A quiet place, anchored not by force, but by balance. The winds may circle, the clouds may pass, but at your center, like the eye of the storm, you remain, still, calm, centered, in the heart of the tropics, where the sun lingers. Long over warm oceans, a quiet engine stirs. It doesn't hum with metal or machines, but with warmth and water, breath and balance. This is the tropical heat engine, the gentle powerhouse behind every hurricane. It begins with sunlight, steady and golden, shimmering on the ocean's surface. That light warms the sea, and the sea, in turn, warms the air above it. But warm air is light, and so it rises, lifting quietly from the surface, carrying invisible moisture with it. And as that warm, moist air climbs, it begins to cool. The moisture condenses, clouds begin to form, and with each droplet, heat is released. This hidden heat, called latent heat, is what fuels the storm. It's the spark that keeps the system breathing. The more moisture rises, the more heat is released. The more heat is released, the stronger the upward motion becomes. This creates a cycle: rising, releasing, spinning, growing. An invisible machine built from air and ocean. But what makes it an engine is not just the rising air. It's the way the storm draws in new air at the surface, pulling it in from all directions, spinning it into curves. This inward motion compresses and concentrates energy. The winds accelerate. The spiral tightens. Then, high in the atmosphere, the warmed air fans outward, completing the loop. In at the bottom, up through the core, out at the top. That loop, in, up, out, is the heartbeat of the tropical heat engine. It's efficient, it's graceful, and it requires very little to run, just warm water, moist air, and time. The hurricane becomes a living cycle of transformation: heat into motion, moisture into energy, wind into shape. It doesn't store power in a single place. It flows, continuously, softly, layer upon layer of warm breath, turning the storm like a wheel. This is why hurricanes don't survive over land. Without the warm ocean, the engine loses its fuel. The air still spins, but the loop breaks. The cycle slows. The spiral fades. And yet, while it turns, the heat engine is a wonder of balance. No combustion, no fire, just warmth, water, and sky, folded into the shape of a storm. So now, as you breathe, imagine this motion inside you. Inhale, rising air. Exhale, soft release. A circle of energy, quiet and complete. In the tropics, the air is always listening for warmth, and when it finds enough, it begins to turn. Not in chaos, but in perfect motion, the soft, unseen work of a natural machine. Time and temperature, two of the quiet architects of every hurricane. They shape the storm, not all at once, but gently, with each passing hour, each shifting degree. A hurricane is not a sudden event. It is a spiral stretched through time, a system that gathers slowly, shaped by temperature's patient hand. It begins in warmth. The sea holds sunlight in its skin, storing heat like a memory. This warmth rises, lifting into the sky, where cool air waits to meet it. That meeting between warm and cool creates clouds. And as they build, they tell the story of changing temperature, hour by hour, layer by layer. But time plays its part too. The storm takes days to grow. It begins as a wave and slowly organizes, guided by invisible timelines. Each moment adds a curve. Each sunrise deepens the warmth. Each rotation of the earth feeds the spiral. Temperature isn't static in a storm, it moves. Warm air rises at the core. Cooler air spills outward at the top. And beneath it all, the ocean breathes heat into the sky. This gradient, the difference between warm and cool, is what drives motion. It's a delicate balance. Too little warmth, and the spiral weakens. Too much shear, and it unravels. But when conditions align, when time allows the structure to build, the spiral takes shape, slowly tightening, layering strength with each cycle. And then, a perfect circle is born. Even the eye, that still quiet center, forms only with time. It sharpens gradually, carved by wind and warmth, into a window of peace. As the storm matures, its temperature changes. The clouds grow colder at the top, a sign of strong, rising air. Infrared satellites capture this story in color. Cool cloud tops glowing bright, circles within circles revealing the storm's strength. And when the spiral begins to fade, it does so gently. The warmth fades, the gradients soften, the winds lose their rhythm. Time brings shape, and time brings rest. Just like day fades into night, and seasons curl into each other, a hurricane follows its own spiral of time. So as you rest here, let your thoughts follow that spiral. Not a race, but a rhythm. Each breath, a temperature shift. Each pause, a passing hour. Let the spiral hold you, not with urgency, but with patience. The hurricane does not rush, it unfolds. And in that slow unfolding, through time and temperature, it finds its form, and so do we. Not every storm becomes a spiral. Not every system finds its center, and that's perfectly natural. While hurricanes are known for their graceful circles, those iconic spirals seen from space, so balanced, so serene, many storms never reach that form. They try, they gather, swirl, and rise. But sometimes, the atmosphere simply doesn't offer the right ingredients, and so they remain unshaped, looser, asymmetric, wandering. To understand why, we begin with conditions. Storms that form in the tropics need more than warmth. They need moisture, low wind shear, and time. They need the calm embrace of a supportive sky. But often, the sky is busy. Winds may blow in different directions at different heights. This wind shear can pull the rising air sideways, stretching the system, distorting it, preventing it from closing into a circle. Other times, dry air sneaks in, a quiet thief in the upper levels. It slips into the warm core, draining the storm's energy, breaking the loop. Even the presence of nearby storms can interfere. Their winds clash, their outflows disrupt, and the structure falters. What begins as a hopeful spiral may scatter, elongate, or split into multiple centers, each one pulling the system in a different direction. These are storms in transition, searching for balance, but not always finding it. And yet, they still have a story, a beauty in their imperfection. From above, an unshaped storm may resemble a swirl that hasn't yet found its rhythm. A painter's first brushstroke, curving but not closed. Rain falls in uneven bands. Clouds stretch long and thin. The center may be broad or hidden. The winds may favor one side more than the other. Meteorologists call these disorganized systems, but that doesn't mean they are failures. They are simply expressions of weather in flux. Sometimes, these storms go on to organize, tightening slowly, forming an eye, finding their circle. Other times, they fade, leaving behind only clouds and rain, soft reminders of what might have been. And this variability is natural. The atmosphere doesn't rush. It experiments. It evolves. Even the most chaotic shapes carry the seeds of spirals within them. So as you listen, let go of the need for perfection. Not all storms need to be circles. Not all patterns must complete. Sometimes, beauty lives in the incomplete, in the swirling sketch that never closes. Rest in that freedom. You don't have to be finished to be whole. You don't have to form a perfect spiral to be part of the sky. High in the atmosphere, stretching across the oceans like invisible rivers, are threads of air, carrying water vapor through the sky. They are known as moisture ribbons, and though they are often unseen, they play a vital role in shaping storms, and sometimes in shaping circles. These ribbons are long, narrow corridors of concentrated moisture. They drift through the tropics and subtropics, connecting warm ocean regions with weather systems in need of fuel. When a developing storm finds one, it drinks deeply, pulling in that moisture like a sponge soaking up the sea. The added vapor fuels cloud growth. It strengthens the rising air, and it helps build the tall towers that define the spiral arms of a hurricane. In satellite imagery, moisture ribbons can sometimes be seen, curved, elegant bands stretching toward storms, feeding them quietly, gracefully. They look like silk threads being drawn toward the center of a spinning wheel. And when these ribbons arrive in the right place, at the right time, they can help a storm close its circle. But their role is delicate. Too much moisture all at once, and the system may flood with disorganization, clouds forming everywhere, structure lost in a blur. Too little moisture, and the storm cannot sustain its spiral. The clouds thin, the energy fades. It's a balance, a thread pulled just tight enough to guide the shape. Moisture ribbons also explain why some storms grow quickly while others struggle. One system may be perfectly placed beneath a steady flow of tropical moisture, and it builds smoothly, gracefully. Another may be stranded, cut off from the ribbon. It stalls, it scatters. The presence of these ribbons can determine a storm's future, and they don't only affect hurricanes. Moisture ribbons can bring rain to faraway places, stretching thousands of miles from the equator to the poles. They are part of the Earth's great circulation, conveyors of warmth, carriers of life-giving rain. In a way, they are nature's brushstrokes, sweeping arcs of vapor that trace paths across the sky. So, as you imagine a hurricane forming, imagine these ribbons too. Delicate threads of vapor, curling softly through the air, woven into the spiral like strands in a tapestry. They may be invisible to the eye, but not to the storm. The hurricane feels their arrival. And when they arrive with care, the spiral finds its strength. So now, as you rest, let your thoughts drift like moisture in the sky. Let them find the gentle current, the ribbon of ease, the thread that leads you inward. Follow the curve. Feel the spiral forming, and let the softness of motion wrap around you, like a ribbon of calm. Every hurricane has a center, a core of motion, where the winds spin and rise, where the storm draws its breath. This spinning motion is called a vortex, a spiraling flow of air, wrapped around a calm center. But what gives a storm its power is not just the presence of a vortex, it's how well that vortex is aligned. When everything in the storm, from the surface to the high clouds above, is turning in the same direction, stacked neatly, layer upon layer, the vortex becomes strong. It's like a spinning top, perfectly upright. It doesn't wobble, it doesn't lean, it spins cleanly, smoothly, with quiet authority. This is called vertical alignment, and it's a sign that a storm has found its balance. In a well-aligned hurricane, the rising air in the center doesn't drift off to the side. It travels straight upward, helping the storm build tall clouds, tighten its spiral, and strengthen its winds. The circulation becomes more organized. The eye clears, the symmetry sharpens. Everything works together. Airflow, temperature, moisture, all rotating around the same invisible pole. But when that alignment is disturbed, the storm begins to struggle. If winds higher in the atmosphere begin to blow in a different direction, they can tilt the vortex, not destroy it, just lean it. And suddenly, the rising air is no longer going straight up. It's drifting. The vortex begins to wobble. Imagine stacking spinning plates on a stick. If one plate tilts, the whole structure begins to shake. That's what happens to the storm. It becomes unstable. Clouds form in odd places. The eye disappears. The spiral begins to lose its curve. And yet, even a tilted vortex can recover. If the disruptive winds fade, if the environment calms, the storm may restabilize. It may realign, rebuild, and return to symmetry. This balance of vertical motion is what separates the strongest storms from those that fade quickly. It's not just about heat or moisture or ocean temperature. It's about structure, about alignment, about stillness within motion. Even when the storm is at its fiercest, a well-aligned vortex holds it together. It becomes the storm's spine, strong, flexible, centered. From space, you can see the difference. A storm with aligned motion looks like a perfect spiral. Its clouds are dense and round. Its eye is calm and clear. A storm out of alignment looks blurred, asymmetric, stretched. The science behind vortex alignment may sound complex, but its message is simple. When the layers of the storm work together, the whole becomes stronger, and in that unity, there is grace. So, now, as you rest, imagine your own breath rising in alignment. Inhale, exhale, each part of you working together, like the winds of a quiet storm, stacked gently in motion, spinning towards center. At the center of every hurricane, past the wind and the rain, beyond the spiral arms and spinning clouds, there is a quiet place, a place where the air is calm, where the skies may be clear, where silence holds steady amid the turning world. This is the eye of the storm, and in its stillness there is something extraordinary. While the winds race furiously around the eye, sometimes at speeds faster than a highway car, the air inside the eye is almost motionless. It doesn't rise, it doesn't swirl, it simply sinks, slowly, warmly. This sinking air presses gently downward, clearing the clouds, drying the sky, making space for stillness. It's this quiet descent that creates the calm center, the pause inside the spiral. And it is more than just a gap in the storm. The eye is part of the storm's structure. Its calm gives the chaos shape. Its stillness gives the winds purpose. Without it, the hurricane would not hold together. The eye is the storm's anchor, its point of balance. Even in the most powerful storms, when the winds howl, when the clouds tower like mountains, the eye remains still and centered. From above, it appears as a perfect circle, a clear spot in the middle of the swirl, sometimes lit by sunlight, sometimes shaded by moonlight, but always holding space for calm. And if you could stand in the eye, you might see blue sky. You might hear birds. You might feel the world hold its breath. But just beyond that circle, the eye wall spins, the strongest winds in the storm, curving tightly around the peace. This contrast between silence and motion is what makes the eye so beautiful. It's a reminder that even in the most intense systems, there is a place of rest. Even in spiraling wind, there can be stillness. And even when the storm moves, its center remains centered. The eye doesn't drift on its own. It follows the path of the storm, but it does not rush. It leads quietly. And as the storm grows and changes, the eye does too, sometimes widening, sometimes shrinking, but always returning to balance. So, as you rest now, imagine yourself in that still center. The world may swirl, thoughts may turn, but here, at your core, there is quiet. Let it hold you. Let it steady you. Let the winds circle far outside. You are in the eye. You are in the calm. And here, there is nothing but peace. Above us, the air seems weightless, a soft, invisible sea in which we float. But the atmosphere, though light and ever-moving, has its own kind of gravity, a circular gravity that shapes the motion of storms and gently pulls them into form. This gravity is not the force that holds us to the ground, but something more delicate, a balancing act between air pressure, wind, and motion. When a storm begins to form, it seeks balance. The warm air rises, the cooler air presses in, and slowly, as these motions repeat, they begin to spin. That spin creates a pull, not inward like a black hole, but outward, a centrifugal nudge that bends the path of moving air into graceful arcs. But the storm doesn't unravel, because for every outward pull, there's a matching inward one. The pressure, gradient force, drawing air toward the low pressure center. These two opposing forces, pulling in and pushing out, hold each other in check. And in that balance, a circle is born. This is the hidden gravity of the hurricane, not a downward pull, but a shaping one. It draws air into a spiral, holds the eye in place, and maintains the storm's symmetry through gentle, continuous motion. Every gust of wind that curves instead of cutting straight, every cloud that spirals inward, is being guided by this circular pull. The storm becomes like a spinning bowl of air moving fast enough to lift, but contained enough not to scatter. Even above the surface, at higher levels of the atmosphere, this gravity holds form. It shapes the outflow, the spreading air at the top of the storm, into a smooth dome, layered and wide. It's why the hurricane maintains its roundness, even while traveling across great distances. The forces remain in balance. The invisible push and pull continue like the hands of a clock moving in time. From the outside, it looks effortless, but inside, it's a dance. Each element tuned to the others, each force moving in harmony. So now, as you breathe in and out, imagine this balance within you. An inhale, the inward pull. An exhale, the outward release. Your breath in circular rhythm, like the atmosphere around a storm. You are not bound by gravity, but held by balance, supported by motion, kept in place by quiet forces you don't even need to see. In the air above, in the pressure around, a soft circular gravity keeps the sky spinning in calm. High above the earth, in the silence of space, a hurricane reveals itself in full. From here, the storm is a spiral drawn in cloud, elegant, symmetrical, drifting slowly across a blue planet. No sound, no rush, just a shape, perfect and wide, timeless. The eye is easy to see, a still, round center surrounded by rings of motion. The eye wall curves around it like the rim of a bowl, dense with cloud and energy. Beyond it, arms stretch outward, spiral rainbands, sweeping in long, curved brushstrokes that reach across hundreds of miles. The hurricane looks peaceful from here. There's no sense of wind or rain, no urgency, only a quiet rotation, a storm turning in slow time, wrapped in soft white layers. Satellite images capture every detail, the cold tops of thunderstorm towers, the clear skies of the eye, the gentle undulations in the outer clouds. Infrared views show color gradients where temperature reveals structure. Bright whites for cold, tall clouds, softer grays for the lower, warmer edges. Some hurricanes have tight, perfect forms, nearly flawless circles. Others appear stretched, more like commas than wheels. But from space, each one is beautiful. Each storm tells a story of where it came from, what fuels it, and how it moves. Astronauts aboard the International Space Station often pause to gaze down at hurricanes. They describe them as surreal, otherworldly, like watching a living painting spiral over the sea. In those moments, the scale of the storm becomes clear. A single storm, stretching wider than entire countries, floating peacefully on a slowly spinning Earth. It reminds us that weather is not confined to where we stand. It's part of something vast, something moving. And it reminds us, too, how delicate that motion is. From space, we see how storms travel paths, guided by air currents, pushed gently by steering winds, nudged by invisible hands. We see their growth, their symmetry, their quiet aging as they eventually lose shape and fade into cloud again. So tonight, let your mind drift upward, rising gently beyond the clouds, until you float above the earth. Look down, see the slow swirl of white, the calm eye, the turning arms. You are in the stillness of space, watching the breath of the sky. And in that breath, there is no fear, only rhythm, only balance, only the soft poetry of a hurricane seen from above. Let that spiral hold you like the arc of the earth and sleep in the slow turning of the stars. Far above the ocean, where air turns quietly in long, sweeping circles, there are seas of spiral clouds, soft white waves, curled by wind, drawn into elegant arcs by the unseen breath of the earth. These cloud spirals are not scattered. They are organized, flowing in ribbons and rings that stretch across the sky like lacework. You may have seen them from satellite images, those great white whirls that bloom slowly over warm waters. From space, they look like galaxies asleep, spinning slowly, spilling cloud into sky. But they are not only beautiful, they are structured. Each spiral of cloud follows the wind. Each layer, each band is part of a greater rotation. These seas of spiraling clouds form in the outer reaches of a hurricane, where rainbands stretch far and wide, and air continues to rise, twist, and fall again. Warm air at the ocean surface gathers moisture as it rises. That moisture condenses into cloud, and the wind shapes it into arcs, spirals, feathers across the sky. The higher the clouds climb, the more intricate their patterns become. Some spin in tight rings near the center, others drift, long and ribbon-like, wrapping the storm like gentle scarves of vapor. There is order in these spirals. Even when the eye cannot be seen, the shape tells the story. These cloud seas respond to pressure and flow. When the wind blows evenly, they curve like brushstrokes. When dry air intrudes or wind shear disrupts the balance, they fray, trail off, or drift away. But in ideal conditions, they draw perfect circles across the sky, vast seas of cloud, with motion smooth as water. The satellite sees it first, those gentle spirals forming over distant ocean. Slowly, the system tightens. The center warms, the clouds lift higher, and the seas of spiral clouds deepen their pattern. They are the outer expression of what is happening deep within. The storm's mood, its motion, its slow breath, rising and falling. Sometimes, these spirals extend hundreds of miles. They can sweep across coastlines, bringing rain before the storm itself arrives. Other times, they linger long after the eye has faded, remnants of a structure that once spun in perfect form. So, as you rest, imagine yourself drifting across these cloud seas, soft, high, endless. The sky beneath you curving in gentle loops, carrying you farther from the noise of day. There is no rush, only wind, only vapor, only clouds wrapped in circles drawn by air. You are floating where the spirals begin, in the silent bloom of cloud and sky. High above the earth, where planes fly and air thins, rivers of wind stream across the sky. These are the jet streams, narrow bands of fast-moving air that encircle the globe. They whisper through the upper atmosphere, flowing from west to east, guiding the movement of weather with invisible hands. And when a hurricane rises from the sea, the jet stream watches from above, sometimes helping, sometimes hindering. One of the most delicate roles the jet stream plays is in shape preservation. For a hurricane to remain symmetrical, its motion must be protected, balanced from top to bottom, aligned from surface to sky. But the upper atmosphere can be fickle. If the jet stream moves too fast above a storm, it can shear the top layer, pulling the vortex off center. Imagine spinning a coin, only to brush your finger against one side. The spin falters. The shape wobbles. This is what strong wind shear does, and jet streams, when misaligned with a storm, can tilt the system. But there are times, magical, fleeting windows, when the jet stream offers quiet support. It doesn't disrupt. It flows just right, pulling gently at the top of the storm, helping its outflow spread cleanly, allowing the rising air within the hurricane to vent smoothly at high altitudes. This peaceful partnership preserves the hurricane's shape. The storm spins steadily. Its clouds build tall. Its eye remains centered. The jet stream becomes a guide, a silent assistant moving the storm across the ocean, carrying it with care. From above, the storm remains perfect, a wheel in motion, a spiral in balance. Even as the hurricane travels, sometimes over hundreds of miles, its form remains intact, protected by this narrow river of air. But the jet stream's influence doesn't last forever. It may shift, bend, or accelerate, and suddenly the hurricane's symmetry begins to fray. Yet even as the shape changes, the story continues. Because these changes are gentle, they are transitions, not endings. And often, the remnants of that shape, the cloud spirals, the curved rainbands, linger like echoes of a near-perfect system. So now, as you drift deeper into rest, imagine the jet stream above you, a smooth, silent ribbon of wind guiding your path. Feel how it holds you steady, not tightly, but gently, preserving your balance as you spin slowly through dreams. There is no turbulence here, only smooth flow, only grace, like a spiral carried by the sky. At the heart of every strong hurricane, there is an eye, calm, clear, still, a quiet center around which the storm gently spins. But sometimes this peaceful circle disappears. The eye, once crisp and steady, begins to fade. Its edges blur, its clarity is lost. What causes a storm to lose its eye? To understand, we must first remember what the eye truly is. Not an empty space, but a balanced pause, a product of perfect motion in all directions. The eye forms when air spirals inward at the surface, rises in tall walls around the center, and descends gently at the core. That downward motion, dry, calm, warming, clears the sky inside the eye and keeps it still. But this fragile harmony can be disturbed. One common cause is a process known as eye wall replacement. In strong hurricanes, the eye wall, the ring of towering clouds around the eye, can begin to collapse inward, while a second ring forms farther out. These two eye walls compete, and in that transition, the original eye is disrupted. It becomes clouded, then obscured. The clear center fills with moisture. The spiral temporarily loses focus. This replacement cycle is natural, and often the eye reforms, sometimes even wider, sometimes more stable. But not all eye loss is so graceful. A storm may pass over cooler waters, losing its heat supply. Without warm air rising from below, the descending motion inside the eye weakens. Clouds begin to form in the center. The eye fills. Or dry air from the outside may sneak into the core. It mixes with the warm, moist air inside, disrupting the balance. The spiral stutters. The inner calm dissolves. Wind shear, those uneven winds higher in the atmosphere, can tilt the entire vortex. The rising column of air bends, and the eye becomes unstable, warped out of shape. Even terrain can play a role. When a storm moves over land, friction disrupts its symmetry. Mountains deflect wind. the energy from the ocean vanishes, and the eye, once beautifully carved by motion, softens into a blur of cloud. But even as it fades, the eye's story continues. Sometimes it reforms. Sometimes it gives way to new structures. Other times, it marks the moment when the storm begins to rest. From above, you can see it happen. The spiral remains, but the center changes. The still point is lost, and with it, a measure of the storm's grace. Yet, there is no failure here, only transformation. A storm that loses its eye is simply changing form, releasing its tightest rhythm, becoming something new. So as you rest, imagine that soft fading, a spiral unwinding, a center dissolving into sky. The eye doesn't vanish in fear or violence. It fades with gentleness, with a slow exhale of a breath no longer needed. And in that letting go, there is peace. Beneath every spiral of cloud, beneath every breath of wind, lies the true architect of the storm, the ocean. It is from the sea that hurricanes draw their strength. And it is the sea that gives each spiral its shape. The process begins with warmth. The sun pours energy into the tropical ocean, heating its surface until it becomes a quiet reservoir of power. This warmth doesn't scream or shout. It hums, soft and steady, waiting to rise. When the air above the ocean warms, it grows lighter and begins to lift. Moisture from the sea rises with it, forming invisible threads of water vapor that climb quietly into the sky. As that vapor cools, it condenses into clouds. And with each droplet, latent heat is released, a gift from the ocean to the atmosphere. This released heat feeds the storm, giving it lift, giving it spin. The warmer the ocean, the stronger the updrafts. The more moisture, the more layers of spiral cloud can form. The spiral tightens. The eye becomes defined. The rainbands reach outward like arms curved by the breath of the sea. But the ocean doesn't just fuel the storm. It sculpts it. The sea surface is not uniform. Temperatures vary, currents shift, and the storm responds. When it travels over deep, warm waters, where heat is not just at the surface but flows down through the depths, the spiral strengthens. It rises taller. It spins more quickly. It organizes with grace. But if the ocean below is shallow or cool, the storm may begin to weaken. The fuel fades. The clouds flatten. The spiral softens. Sometimes, as the storm churns the water, it brings cooler water up from below. This upwelling can cool the surface, a feedback loop that gently slows the system down. The ocean also shapes the speed of the spiral. Friction with the water slows the winds near the surface. This drag helps turn the flow inward, focusing the rotation around the center. Without the ocean's surface beneath, the air might spin loosely, scattered and unfocused. But over water, especially warm, tropical seas, the spiral finds its grip. From above, you can see the relationship clearly. The most symmetrical hurricanes trace their path over wide bands of warm ocean where currents flow gently and temperatures remain steady. They become reflections of the water below them, fluid, balanced, beautiful. So, as you settle into rest, imagine the sea beneath the storm, a quiet painter, brushing warmth into the sky, shaping the spiral with every rise of vapor. You are floating there now, between ocean and air, held by the rhythm of the deep. Let the spiral shape you. Let the waves steady you. Let the ocean rise beneath your breath, and feel how soft power creates quiet form. There is something quietly mesmerizing about the way nature turns. From galaxies that swirl in distant space, to leaves caught in autumn breezes, to the silent pull of ocean currents around underwater mountains, nature seems to favor the spiral. And nowhere is this more evident than in the gentle, circling grace of a hurricane. At first glance, it may seem chaotic, a vast storm spinning across the sea. But look closer. Let yourself drift into the rhythm of the motion. You'll find balance. You'll find order. You'll find elegance. Hurricanes are not random storms. They are rotating systems of equilibrium, governed by subtle forces: heat, moisture, wind, pressure, and the steady turning of the Earth. It is that rotation, the Earth's slow, persistent spin, that gives birth to the hurricane's own spiral, a mirror of the planet's motion. As air rushes toward the storm's center, it bends, it curves, not by chance, but by the Coriolis effect, a gentle nudge from the Earth's rotation that turns straight lines into arcs, arcs into spirals, spirals into storms. This is where elegance lives, not in the noise, but in the pattern. Each cloud moves in rhythm. Each gust of wind follows a path. The rainbands, the eye wall, the spinning tower of cloud, all aligned, all centered around a still, quiet eye. Even the eye itself is an act of grace. The hurricane moves, yet holds its center. The winds rush, but leave the heart untouched. It is like a dancer spinning so perfectly that the center remains steady as the world flows outward. This symmetry isn't rigid. It breathes, it changes. But even in transformation, the spiral persists. We find this elegance elsewhere too, in the way rivers curl through valleys, in the whirl of a nautilus shell, in the way vines twist toward the sun. Nature spins not to confuse, but to create. Spirals allow energy to move without breaking. They hold form while allowing flow. So tonight, as you rest, let your breath follow that same spin, soft, circular, balanced. Inhale, the spiral draws in. Exhale, the spiral expands. You are part of this rhythm, part of the planet's quiet rotation, part of the same motion that shapes clouds into spirals and stillness into calm. The elegance of nature's spin isn't just in what it moves, but in how it does so gently, silently, perfectly. Every spiral has a beginning, and every spiral has a soft, graceful end. Just as the hurricane forms over warm water and rising air, so too does it dissolve into something quieter. This is the final chapter of the storm, not an ending filled with force, but one of release. The unwinding. It begins with change. The storm moves over cooler seas. The air it breathes is no longer rich with moisture. The fuel fades. Winds slow. The pressure rises, and the elegant spiral loosens. Sometimes, landfall begins the unraveling. The storm, no longer over ocean, meets friction. Mountains, trees, and terrain disrupt its flow. The eye blurs. The eye wall collapses inward. Rainbands stretch and thin. The circle begins to unwind. Other times, high-altitude winds pull the storm apart from above, displacing clouds, tilting the vortex, teasing the spiral into fragments. This process is not dramatic. It is soft. It is steady, like a thread being pulled gently from a coil. What was once tightly wound is now flowing outward. Even the rain begins to fall differently, not in graceful arcs, but in patches, like the last gentle taps of a fading drum. The storm no longer breathes in rhythmic spirals. It exhales and lets go. From above, the satellite sees the change. The eye disappears. The symmetry breaks. The storm's arms begin to drift apart like petals falling from a spinning flower. And yet, there is beauty in this too. Because dissolution is not disorder. It is simply the return of form to formlessness. The hurricane, having spun its dance, now yields to stillness. Its energy disperses into the wider atmosphere. Its moisture returns to the sky and soil. Its wind becomes breeze. Its structure becomes memory. Nothing is lost, only transformed. The circle is not broken, it is unspooled. And as the last of the clouds fade into twilight, we are reminded that all things move in rhythm, formation, spinning, balancing, dissolving, a spiral that ends, not in silence, but in sleep. So now, as your breath grows slower, let yourself unwind with the storm. Feel the tension release. Feel the rhythm loosen. Let the circle soften into rest. You have traveled through the storm, through science and story, wind and wonder. And now, there is only peace. The spiral fades, the sky clears, and the world rests. And as our journey winds down, may the quiet geometry of hurricanes leave you with a sense of awe and calm. We've drifted across warm oceans, followed spirals through the sky, and watched as nature shaped its perfect circles, not with force, but with patience, not with urgency, but with rhythm. These storms, so grand from afar, hold within them the softest lessons of balance, of breath, of the beauty in repetition. A reminder that even in motion there is stillness, and even in power there can be peace. Thank you for resting with me tonight, and for allowing the winds, the waves, and the wonder to lull you into gentle sleep. If these calming weather stories bring you comfort, you're welcome to like or subscribe, only if the moment feels right. But for now, there's nothing you need to do. Just let the spirals fade, let the skies grow still, and let yourself be carried into the quiet that follows the storm. Good night.